Hey super friends, my name is Neil and welcome to this very special edition of the Get Your Comic On podcast. This episode I am sitting down with three very good friends of mine that I have made through doing this wonderful job. You will have heard them on this podcast many times before. Also, we have talked about comic books that they have published in the past, including Snow the Dawn, Eventide and The Red Wave. Today we are here to discuss their latest work, which is a collection of some of their previously published and some new work called The Lone Tales, which is coming soon to Kickstarter. So please sit back and enjoy my latest interview with Nick, Harry and Luke. It's been a while since I think we had all four of us sat round the table to discuss one of your many projects. So why are we back here this time, guys? What are we talking about? What are we releasing?
So we are finally finishing Odyssey, which the first part came out in 2019. But we're doing it in mind-blowing. We're doing it as part of a graphic novel called Lone Tales. And it is the 2 chapters of Odyssey and the 2 chapters of Whistblower, which was the other series that released pretty much the same time as Odyssey as well. So it sort of just seemed like a good time to put both of them together into one book, which is like 124 pages of content.
Awesomeness. It's 124 pages of awesomeness is what you need to say, I think. I can't believe
that's the tagline.
I can't believe it's been 4 years. So I just looked up my review of Odyssey to see exactly when it was, and I published it on the 1st of November 2019, which I find baffling. So, which immediately kind of made me want to ask the question of why the wait for chapter 2?
Kind of a multitude of things. So COVID.
I mean, there was a pandemic, obviously.
Yeah, COVID.
Yeah, that small thing happened,
Yeah. And I think we didn't want to release it as, because Whistleblower started on Tapas, and so it was like a page a week, and we kind of stuck with that formula through the pandemic, like because Whistleblower was done. But for Odyssey, we weren't doing it as a digital release. We did it during the pandemic. Eventually, we just put it out. But the second part, we always said we wanted to do when we could release it in print as well. And they just sort of never came a good time to get it printed and put out. And then Harry and I went off and did the Red Wave because we sort of just saw an opportunity of time to be able to do that mammoth book. And then I think probably like last summer when we were finishing the Red Wave, we sort of said, oh, Odyssey, the pencils and inks are done. So Harry just needed to color it. And we were kind of like, it seems silly if we don't put it out somehow in some way. And that's kind of when Lone Tales sort of just came together, was we were just kind of like, well, maybe it just makes sense to... Whistleblower 2 never had a print release, and Odyssey 2's never had a print release, so let's put them together.
We also had an issue because of the pandemic as well. Like, us three usually would meet up at least once or twice a year. I used to run comic conventions in Norway, and that was always something that we would aim to get something out for as a release to kind of push more. But because of the pandemic, that didn't happen for 2 years, and then obviously then everyone has to start getting back on track. So obviously Nick and Harry started working on Red Wave as well, which was we went through Kickstarter. So I think if we'd had something physical to actually like meet in person and push, then it probably may have happened a bit sooner as well. So it's just the way things worked out, I guess. So, but we're here now, doing it. So
yeah, that's
I think it's good as well to put them together as well, because they wanted to be out physically, and we wanted to finish both stories in print together as well. So it's a sensible move. If we have a successful Kickstarter, then hooray!
Yeah,
it
was all worth it.
There's nothing better than having the physical copy at the end of it as well, to be able to say, this is the thing that we achieved with it. This is the piece of art that we created, and here it is out in the world, ready to go. Okay,
yep.
So let's stick with Odyssey for a minute. For anybody that's not familiar or hasn't read chapter 1, give me a little overview of Odyssey.
Do it, Nick. You're the man at this.
Oh gosh. Okay.
No pressure.
Because I've written the tagline for this about 90 million times in the last 6 weeks. So
you don't get it by heart now.
I won't. There's no way, because I've changed it too many times. I'm going to give you like all the 20 different versions. So it's set in 2154 in the Snow Universe, which for anybody who doesn't know what the Snow Universe is, Harry and I started a comic series called Snow the Dawn, which is set in a world where climate change and global warming happened, like the effects of it happened much earlier than anybody thought. Ironically, I didn't realize this until the other day. I'd said that all of the effects happened in 2020. So I was slightly wrong that, it wasn't global warming ending the earth, but it was a pandemic.
You're close.
Yeah. So that's kind of a setup for the world, is that the Snow Universe is set in a version of London which is sort of fractured and figuring itself out post flooding and torrential rain and heat and all the grim effects of global warming. So then that kind of main series is set in 2079. And for Odyssey, we used it as a way to essentially create a bookend for the Snow Universe. So it is the last point in the world that we'll probably ever visit. And it is a way to kind of say this is where everything goes ultimately, which is in the year 2154. And it's following a family who are fighting to escape Earth because of infected hordes. And they're trying to get to a ship called the Odyssey, which is their last savior. So that's
right. I'm going back in my memory now. Am I right in thinking it basically ended with them almost reaching the Odyssey?
Kind of. They got they basically saw another ship called the Atlas. Yeah. So this is a spoiler in case anybody's not.
Sorry. Yeah, we've just gone straight to spoiler territory.
It's fine.
I love spoilers. That's what our podcast is all about. Spoilers, straight out of the
bat. So there is a ship called the Atlas, which for the first chapter sort of runs parallel to this story of the family trying to get off Earth. And where we kind of ended our characters in chapter 1, it was they'd made a plan of how to get to the Odyssey. Whether that plan is a good idea, we'll see.
Will we find out in chapter 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much straight away.
It all maybe goes wrong.
Maybe.
Let's not get too far into spoiler territory, but what would you like to tease about chapter 2?
That's a good question.
There's a lot more. I mean, there's a lot more action in chapter 2.
Yeah.
It's a lot darker.
A lot darker, yeah.
Interesting.
So it picks up. I mean, I think if you're reading this as a complete thing, which is what we're hoping to do, then you're kind of, there are elements that it's like hectic. There's like a bit in chapter 1 where there's this rooftop scene, and it's like very fast paced, and then it kind of brings it back down again. So there's a lot of slower parts in chapter 1, and then chapter 2 like picks up the pace. And I think if you read it as a complete thing, it's kind of like, holy, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Holy hell! Like this is holy shit. It's really kicking off now.
It's definitely the second half. The pace never really lets up, I don't think. The first half, I feel like there are a lot of you probably get more interactions between the characters in terms of who they are and where they've come from. But for the second half, it's very much they're up against the clock. Literally, there is a clock throughout Odyssey that counts towards midnight, because what other time is it going to be? And yeah, the second half is basically just run for it, go. And yeah.
Awesome. So you just said that it was slightly darker, which I'm very intrigued by. So I'm going to throw to you, Harry, and say, does that alter any of the visual style in chapter 2 compared to chapter 1? Is it
yeah, so it's sorry, what were you going to ask? And I'll answer that.
No, I was going to say, is it darker visually overall, or how does the darker tone impact on how the second chapter looks?
So the first chapter, basically all of this was drawn a long time ago. So I inked everything way back when. We added a couple of additional pages, but that was only a couple of months after I'd finished the bulk of everything. So I hadn't actually done anything with the pages for a long time. So when I've gone back to them, I'm basically colouring them post doing the red waves. It's a bit of a different. I think I'm more familiar with the digital colouring side of things. So that I might be wrong, but Odyssey was the first thing I coloured digitally, right? Nick?
Yeah, it was, because you were practicing it when you were here. Like,
yes, there you go. So I've done a bit of work in between since then. So I think it's more refined. But as far as being darker, the first issue is sort of moving into the evening. So it starts at like sunset and it turns to nightfall. And at the end of the comic, at the end of the first half, it's basically it's all fire and explosions, but it's night setting in. So the second half visually is a lot darker because it's all at night. But I think the tone is a little darker, wouldn't you say, Nick, for like narrative wise? So like it's impacted in that, like, obviously I've had to draw darker things, but like, yeah, it's a much like more, it's much moodier compared to the first half, like, for sure. And there's a lot of rain. Yeah, it's not a miserable read, but it's very like the first half's quite sci-fi. It's quite punchy, and there's you're getting a lot of the stuff with the soldiers and the tents. There's a lot of like green and red light and stuff like there. The second half is equally sci-fi, but more. Oh, I don't know. You know how Blade Runner's miserable, but sci-fi. It's got like the color palette is very drab comparably, but for the most part at least. So it's got like a Zack Snyder. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
we should promote it as a miserable sci-fi.
There's your quote right tagline. Yeah. Yeah, I think as well, like narratively, because for anybody who might not have heard of Odyssey before this, so Luke and I, the way we wrote it was that we basically wrote 4 pages each, and tied that all together into a narrative.
Just to cut it, like you're saying, the comic is 8 pages in total.
Yeah, it is. That's it.
What really punchy. It's like the punchiest thing you have ever read.
It's a miserable sci-fi. It's done.
Yeah, so because we divvied up the way that we were writing it, the first chapter, it's sort of our split was a little bit easier in terms of Luke was sort of following the family, I was sort of following the events of the Atlas. And then when we go into the second chapter, Luke and I kind of just tackle what their kind of stakes are. I think that's probably why it becomes more dreary, is that it's kind of peril for the family. In that, you know, at the end of the first chapter, they're sort of like, we've got this plan and what comes next is not ideal. Let's put it that way.
There's a tagline. Not ideal.
We've got so many good taglines now, guys. It's worth doing this just to get the taglines.
Yeah, on it.
Okay, and then so you've teamed it up with Whistblower, which from my memory was somewhat of an experimentation with what you guys were doing and sort of passing on and letting other writers get involved with that side of the universe. So do you want to talk a bit about that and why you decided to include that, other than obviously wanting to get it out in print?
Yeah, I think when we were working on Odyssey, because we did this book back in 2017, which is called The Eventide, and it was sort of just expanding the Snow universe. It was the first time we sort of kind of gave the reins to like other artists or whatever to kind of see what this world would look like through other people's eyes. And I think for Whistblower, we had this character in Snow, issue 3, that Harry and I really liked. This character called Banks, and we were sort of throwing around ideas of like what we could do with him, but in our kind of main Snow the Dawn narrative, there kind of wasn't the space to do it properly. And so I was talking to a friend of mine who's the writer of Whistblower, Will Gillingham, and sort of said, look, there's this character in particular, Banks, that we'd like to explore a little bit with, and there's also this other character that will play a bigger role in Snow down the road. And I said, you know, if you ever want to write anything in that vein, please let me know. And he came back and sort of told me what he wanted to do, and it sounded really cool. And it was just kind of like a thriller, which I think Harry and I hadn't really, I don't think we've done really proper thriller stuff. And it's kind of like I don't know how to describe it. Will described it as Minority Report or the Adjustment Bureau, which I think is probably the best kind of comparison, in that it's it's quite a complex story, which I quite like. And the art for it, we brought in Stuart McGarry, who worked with us on the Eventide as well, and his art just perfectly matched Will's story. It was one of those weird kind of, you just put two people together and you're like, oh, that was exactly what the book should be. And so the reason to kind of include it was just that because this story takes place in 2079 and ours is in 2154, it was kind of a nice way to say, like, this is kind of the present part of the universe, which is, you know, where Snow the Dawn takes place and where a lot of the Eventide takes place. But then 2154 is like, that's where it's all kind of going. So it was nice to kind of tie them together. And there's a couple of little references in Odyssey that link to Whistblower as well, very subtly. So yeah,
cool.
Yeah, don't look, because they're real subtle.
Yeah.
Like, don't start making plot lines up and join.
Yeah,
it's not that intricate.
That's where my brain was going. I'm thinking I'm going to have to read this really carefully again.
Actually do look at it real hard.
Buy several copies so you can just...
And maybe like try turning them upside down and put them behind glass and UV light.
If you buy
more than one copy.
If you buy several copies, then you could also create one of those like detective boards on your wall.
Exactly what I was about to say. It's going to end up on the wall with little bits of like red string.
Yeah.
Do it.
If
you buy every copy available, what happens is they all tile. This is a big spoiler. They all tile alongside next to each other. It's like 5,000 by 5,000, and it makes one big image. And
we won't tell you what that image is. It's like it's like James Gunn's Easter egg in Guardians of the Galaxy. So we'll never tell you what it is, but you've got to look. You've got to try.
Well, I think that leads us on perfectly to the Kickstarter. So, firstly, when is the campaign launching?
It launches on the 11th of May at 7 p.m. UK time.
And what are we offering for our wonderful backers out there this time around?
So there is a fair few things. You can obviously get the digital copy, the physical copy. You can get several physical copies, as we said, if you want to create a detective time board or figure out what the image is with 5,000 copies. It's there.
5,000. So
okay, so
that's 250,000 copies.
Fine.
How much is that one? I might bid on that one.
You just got to buy a single.
Yeah, just singles. There's no tiers. So yes, you can do that. And then we've got 2 book plates. So because our cover is kind of designed to look a little bit kind of like a grindhouse sci-fi front cover poster thing, we did 2 separate images. So one represents Odyssey and one represents Whistblower. And we tweaked the design a little bit for the cover, but part of it was just the one that we had originally we really liked as like a book plate. Like, it looks perfect as this book plate. So yes, there's 2 book plates on offer. There's retailer incentives. There is a tier called the Headshot, where if you've seen any of our social media, you've probably seen our faces as zombies. And you can get your face as a zombie in a digital custom sketch. It's for profile pictures. It's for LinkedIn pictures if you want to really pull in your employers, or
Christmas cards,
dating profiles. It's all there. So you can get the Headshot, and I think that's it. Oh, also, for anybody who read the Red Wave, we're going to do the Red Wave, the director's cut.
Ooh.
which is a monochrome version of the Red Wave issue 1 with some back matter, will be like concept art and
Nice.
things to throw in. So that's an add-on. So, and it looks cool in black and white. It's
Harold's add-on as well. You forgot that one.
I forgot what?
The Snow comics, all the Snow comics.
Oh yeah! Oh my god! How could I forget? There is a Snow Universe digital bundle, which we've described as the smorgasbord of comic goodness, and you'll get basically everything that is in existence of the Snow Universe right now. So that's Snow 1 to 3, the Eventide. It's the short story collection, and you can get Lone Tales. So you will pretty much have the entire library.
So this really is, and this popped into my head earlier and I just couldn't shift it afterwards. Your Greatest Hits, Volume 1.
It is.
Should have called it that, shouldn't we?
We should have called it that. What are you two playing at, calling it Lone Tales? Could have called Greatest Hits.
Am I right in saying that that's you guys as well on that book plate? Because it certainly looks familiar.
It is. Yeah. We couldn't decide on a cover for Odyssey because if I'd done a cover for it, I'd have wanted to do some like Star Wars cover, where they've got like the tiered backgrounds as like Darth Vader, but I didn't have enough not that there's not enough big characters in it, but I didn't have the time or anything else to be putting together some gigantic cover. So we thought we wanted something punchy because it's restricted size, because it's like a double panel cover. We thought just maybe have some infected clawing their way through the cover. And then we were like, hey, why don't we just make it our faces? So it's the three of us as infected crawling through the front of the book. But then it also helped feed in as advertising for the headshot tier, because we're like, here's literal example of what you'll be getting. So
but you're forgetting the bit where you told me, whilst I was sitting next to my wife, to send you a reference photo of my face looking as disturbing as possible, which I also think could be a tier where we throw those photos in just because they're great.
We just changed the cover so it's just the original picture.
Yeah, it's just the original, yeah. It's like a variant cover, right? So it's like
I do love the cover. I got the whole Grindhouse kind of double bill vibe straight away. That was awesome. The first thing I thought when I saw it. Perfect. We do love that font as well. The font on Lone Tales is beautiful.
With the drop shadow.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah, sorry. I didn't know really who to credit, to be honest, because it's not. I've not created that font.
Take the win, Harry.
Perfect. Take it.
Yeah.
Take the win.
Good job for creating that font.
Yeah.
Do you want to just wrap it up by reminding us when the Kickstarter goes live?
Sure. So the Kickstarter will go up on the 11th of May at 7 p.m. UK time. We'll have some early bird offers as well. So if you access it between the first day and the Sunday, I think we chose, you can get a digital copy for £5, 124 pages for £5. We're mad. Rather than £8, and you could get a physical copy for £10, which is also pretty mad. That's down from 15. So yeah, and with the physical you get digital as well, just like to point out.
And if you're buying 250,000 copies, that's time to do it.
Yeah,
exactly. If you buy 250,000 copies of the physical, you've also got to pay for the digital.
Correct.
Suckers.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to sit down and talk about whatever it is that you are working on. You are always welcome on however anybody is watching this, be it YouTube or listening to an episode of the podcast. Thank you very much, and best of luck with Lone Tales.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to the guys for sitting down with me. It's always a pleasure to help them promote the latest project that they've been working on. So I really hope that you go and check out the Kickstarter, back them and help them to make the Lone Tales become a reality. We'll be back soon with a brand new podcast, and maybe, just maybe, I'll tell you about what happened when I went to see The Flash. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, bye.